Hi, good day. My name is Yves. I'm here with Gabriel Dusil from Co-Founder of Adel. We're just going to talk a little bit about the project and a little bit about the cryptocurrency community. And yeah, Gabriel, let's take it away.
Well, actually, the framework is important to explain, I think, from the standpoint of how this opportunity came about and how we saw the opportunity. And it comes down to the fact that blockchain has become a phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a phenomenon currently in the entrepreneurial space and the trading space. Maybe not so much in a mainstream capacity, but it's usually the early adopters are the entrepreneurs and the investors in the technology, and then it becomes mainstream once it matures. So we don't have a mature market right now, but this is really the timing in terms of taking these ideas and running with them. And one of the things that we found that we could do quite positively in this community is to allow this incubation of ideas, especially in the framework of a lot of people that have ideas don't have the resources in order to implement them.
Yeah, indeed.
And that really distinguishes us from any type of venture capital type initiative where the venture capitalists expect some sort of business plan, some structure, some cash flow, org chart, a lot of comprehensive detail in order for them to assess whether there is a viable investment in that idea. And a lot of times it could take 6 months to a year, even longer, to create all that documentation, to create and do the market research, to bring the people together in order to formulate such a plan. So and a lot of people, from our perspective, just don't have the resources, and it would take them a long time to find the resources. And if they find the resources, they may not be the best resources in order to facilitate what they're trying to achieve. Because you want a really good lawyer, you want a really good accountant, you want a good operations manager, you want a good visionary. So we felt it was a good marriage of bringing communities into this venture capital type model where ideas can be incubated in a community, and the bigger the community, the more brain power we have, the more ideas we have, the more capital investment, the more passion, and all of that together creates this perfect storm where we can incubate projects in a wiki process. In a collaborative manner, and that's ultimately what we want to do. And we split it up into 3 phases. We have idea incubation, we call it I2, and that's really a marketing document to further solidify what the idea is all about, so that other people can understand what you're talking about.
Sure.
And also, especially when it's in a market where they're not familiar with, right? So you're talking about various types of regional experience, disciplinary experience, market experience, vertical markets, horizontal markets, and you're looking at a community that may not be familiar with that idea. So you have to formulate it into some sort of concise document, and that would be in a wiki process that we're building right now. It's a collaboration module, and then once that document is established to a good state, then we would move to a P2 process. We call that project planning. And now this is really where the business plan comes together, and we have much more comprehensive details of what we need to have: org charts and capital costs and operational costs and everything that you would expect from an org chart perspective, from a business plan perspective. So that takes, again, a wiki process direction, and the community members would participate in that, and then once we get to a certain point in that business plan, we decide, we go for a vote to execute on that project. And the vote is then a democratic vote to proceed and then execute, and we then call that enterprise execution, so E2, so I2, P2, E2, and then the project gets launched. And in the launching of that project, now you have people that were involved from the very beginning. They saw this incubation process. They would move to helping to launch that project, which would then be raising the capital. And we're actually working right now on the legal framework to create that E2 process. We're in the middle of that planning at the moment. And all those members then have an employment opportunity, if they wish, to be employed in those projects as well. So they ultimately could be employed in 5 or 6 different projects, consulting on their expertise, which may be legal. So it's kind of a long answer to your question, but that's really what we're putting together.
So in a way, it's a way for I guess entrepreneurs to get involved in the community in a way that kind of does a lot of the frameworking for them. It also allows them to actually join that if they have the expertise or if they have the knowledge in a certain area of the project, they could also volunteer their expertise in that area and help the project in that way.
We could look at it from a volunteer perspective, but ultimately they're participating in a process that they will ultimately own in the end. In some sort of profit sharing or that type of framework once we get to the E2 process. But then so there's different motivations for different members. Some are motivated just because they have ideas and they need help in terms of incubating those ideas. Some are excited about the employment opportunities, and some are just speculators because they want the Adel coin to go up in value, so they want everything to do well so that the coin goes up. And then others want to actually be part of this E2 process as a profit sharing partner. So there's multiple different motivations to participate in the ecosystem.
Okay. How are those projects rolling out right now?
So we put 3 projects onto our website before the ICO, and like I said, the peer-to-peer ATM. The healthcare blockchain, and then the accounting blockchain. And we really wanted to demonstrate that we also have a stake in presenting ideas to the community. We felt that we wanted to showcase the Adel R&D team as a visionary in terms of where blockchain could be utilized, and we actually had 12 projects, and we only showed 3 on the website. So ultimately what will happen is that once we have this collaboration module ready, then we will present these projects on the collaboration module so that the community can look at them, can help to incubate them and improve them even further. And then we would find out from the popularity of those which ones will rise to potentially move to the project planning stage.
And that's up to the community on how they vote and what they find interesting and what they see viable. They'll have a presentation, some projects from yourself, maybe some from community members, and then ultimately those will go into the initial stage of a presentation of the project, and then it's up to the community about how they essentially vote that project up the chain in a way.
Well, the voting is really on the approval of the business plan. So they're not voting in the incubation stages. We don't really want to have this arduous process of multiple voting on a granular level. We want the focus of the voting on, do you agree to this business plan that you've created in the community, and make it quite simple. The business plan. So we don't want votes on, do you agree to pay the utility bill this month? It doesn't make sense, and it won't help the community. But what we will do is, in the Wiki process, we can measure popularity in various different metrics. We can measure popularity on the number of characters that are typed, the number of characters that are deleted, which establishes which the characters are actually chosen for the final document. The ones that are deleted would be minus, for example. Then obviously that content was not useful, and it would prevent people just from typing AAA for 1,000 times and creating characters, right? Which nobody would really do. But it's the useful content will be most valuable in the end, and then we can measure based on the amount of time a document has been incubated, the amount of members that participated in the incubation process. And we want to help this process along, because what we want to do is we want to create a bunch of experts in the community that become experts in business planning. So we want to educate the member community on how to incubate an idea, how to incubate the project plan, and eventually we will get to the stage where we can cookie cutter this whole process, where the first plan may take 4 months, the second plan may take 3, third plan 2, and we may take we may only need 1 month to do business plans a year from now, or
yeah, it just becomes, I guess, more streamlined as you've done it once. You kind of knock out the dents and you figure out how to make that operation go more smoothly.
Exactly. Like the operations manager will say, we did a cash flow for this one project, and I could just use that cash flow now for this new project to make just a few changes.
Yeah.
Now that we have, like, we've done cash flow for 10 different projects, we can start using that documentation and cookie and taking the sections which are relevant to past projects that have already been executed to the newer ones. So there's a lot of opportunities at a 10,000 meter level to see what's happening at the project incubation. And then what might also happen is we could be combining ideas, right? So a community may not like an idea initially, but then something else comes up in the future, and we find out, well, if we combine those two ideas together, then it becomes a really cool idea. So let's incubate that, right? And without that oversight, we wouldn't be able to do that, right? And so the more projects that come in, and the more talent that we bring in to the community, the more we can have these type of flexibilities in incubating ideas.
Maybe just taking a little step back, and I wanted to ask, before working on Adel, what was your what got you into this whole cryptocurrency space before you were working on Adel? Had you been involved in cryptocurrency in another way? Did you kind of get into this quite recently and say, this is where the future is? What was it? What was the spark that kind of really got you involved in this whole cryptocurrency rabbit hole, basically? Because it is a bit, I think anybody who gets into this, they do know it's kind of like this thing. You start off a little bit finding out about Bitcoin, and then all of a sudden you're reading and you get drawn into it. And I think if you either you go all the way down, or you just pull the plug. So I think I'm one of these people that have already gone into this cryptocurrency in a big way. I believe a lot in the future of it in one form or another. And what was the moment for you that made you kind of brought you really into this whole cryptocurrency space?
Well, it's interesting, and I might have to go back a little deep into my past really to explain how I got to where I am now. But I have an engineering physics background, so that's my schooling, engineering physics, and I didn't pursue engineering at all in my career. I decided to go into business. So I moved from Canada to Prague in '94, and then joined Motorola. And this was really at the beginning of the internet. The internet was just growing, and the funny thing is that the same growing pains that the internet had in the '90s is exactly happening to blockchain. So I could shelve that comment in a second, but so we were really on the cusp of growing the internet, and Motorola was really part of that whole process. And then in the 2000s, we called them the noughties. In the 2000s. I joined VeriSign, and I moved into the security space, and that again was at the beginning of a really big boom in security, in SSL and digital certificates, in encryption technologies, and we were teaching a lot of partners around the world about the security that we're selling in VeriSign. Then we got into managed security services, to 24/7 management of security infrastructures. I was actually the sixth employee in VeriSign in Europe in 2000. Okay. We then grew to 800, and then we shrunk down to 150 before my division that I joined, which was the MSS division. Managed Security Services, was sold off to SecureWorks. And then SecureWorks took the MSS portfolio of VeriSign and ran with it and expanded it further. VeriSign eventually was bought by Symantec. SecureWorks was eventually bought by Dell. And I then took my family, which was in England at the time, back to Prague. So I forgot to mention that I actually moved to London in '99 with Motorola. And then I moved to VeriSign in London. So for 12 years there. So I came back to Prague and joined security company called Cognitive Security. They had this really fabulous network behavioral analysis tool, and they were just starting off, no offices or anything. They had this great intellectual property.
So kind of like a startup vibe company.
Complete startup, yeah. So I went right into the startup space, moving back to Prague, helped build up the marketing, sales, their whole plan in terms of the project portfolio, and really built them up to eventually being bought by Cisco for $25 million about 2 years later. So they were purchased very fast after I had joined. Then I went into video streaming. Left. I had done 12 years in internet security, so I decided to leave internet security altogether. Completely redefine myself and get into internet streaming, which actually wasn't such a bad transition, because it was looking at video streaming from a cloud-based service perspective. It was called OTT services, or over-the-top services like Netflix.
Yeah.
And I was selling already OTT services with the MSS. MSS is an OTT service, a cloud-based service, and then helped out a few startups along the way. And then started my own company, Eurotech Startups, and then Michael Vavrick approached me in February of last year and said, you should look at this blockchain. I've been doing some investigation, and I think we could have a big idea here. And I knew Michael for about 5 years before that. We've known each other since when I moved back to Prague. So he asked me if I wanted to participate in this Adel incubator idea. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And it was hitting on my experience, because it was cloud-based to the version 2, which is taking cloud to
decentralizing the cloud.
Decentralizing the cloud, exactly.
Yeah.
And it used public-private key in its core technology, which is what I was selling in VeriSign, which was PKI, public key infrastructure, but not from a certificate authority perspective, but at least using the public-private key technology and hashing technologies and all that kind of stuff. So it was quite familiar territory for me. Yeah. And so we started to build Adel. I was the second one to join, and we started to build a team of people, and it's been exciting. So ultimately, if I look back, I've always looked at technologies that were at the cusp of growing significantly in terms of volume, in terms of revenue potential. Whether it was the internet in the 90s, whether it was internet security in the 2000s, first decade, and video streaming after that, and blockchain is really the next phenomenon. So I've always seen that this potential, and blockchain is certainly the biggest one since the internet was created, I believe.
Yeah. Really interesting that you share that with me, and I kind of feel the same way. I've been involved in the security space for a while, and in my job I have a huge overlap of kind of cryptocurrency in a way. Being in security, you obviously we work a lot with people that experience ransomware, stuff like that, crypto lockers. So that kind of Bitcoin overlay, it's a part of our daily conversation, whether it's direct or whether it's a part of some kind of security breach, whether it's involved in cryptography and secure communications in some way. There was this big overlap that I saw kind of in the cryptocurrency space, which is kind of what drew me slightly into it. And then maybe from a personal question to you, given your background in security, I wanted to understand, how does security in your past play into your current role in Adel? Is there, I imagine with anything like this, there's obviously a lot of security concerns about the way you architect certain projects and the way you develop your platforms. How does security play into your business cycle? Is it kind of a priority? Obviously, it's a priority for everybody, but what is the security implications, and how does security play into your mind in going into these projects?
So we were very cognizant of the ISO 27001 security standard, which sets a framework for corporations to follow certain practices, best practices in security. And that certainly applies to us because we believe that the ultimate requirement that we have is to protect these ideas from a security perspective, right? So we, and how do we do that? So there's different ways that we can do that. And one of the things that you realize in security is you never remove risk. You never remove the threat. you can only mitigate it, right?
Yeah.
So how do we mitigate the threat of stealing ideas or taking them out of the community and somebody else running with it? Because you're incubating at an early stage, and you need to keep it a secret to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Because you have a whole community that sees this stuff, right? So we're doing that in a few different levels. One is that we're following an ISO 27001 standard in terms of secret information, confidential, internal use, public information. So that's going to be part of our policy, our InfoSec policy. We also have a membership requirement to join the community, and that also, to a large extent, protects the community members because they have a stake in the incubation process, right? So by having 64,000 Adelphoi as a member, then there's some seriousness there.
Just to show that you're vested a bit in the interest and not, protecting it from trolls and people just,
Exactly. And ultimately there may be trolls in the end anyway, just with 64,000. So it doesn't eliminate the risk. It just mitigates the risk.
It mitigates it, as you said. Yeah.
And then we have a community terms and conditions, which all the members will be signing once we have the collaboration module. It'll have the NDA in there, non-disclosure agreement, which everybody will sign to say, the IDs that are incubated stay within the community. You can't take the documentation out, that sort of thing. So quite standard things. And then another one is that we really, because we're going to be cookie cutting this whole process, we think that we can be the speed train against bicycles that maybe are trying to copy what we're doing. So it's all about execution. We need to execute well, we need to execute efficiently, and we need to execute fast. So that's part of what we're trying to do in this community, that even if somebody does take a document out and tries to find the resources externally to run the project, that we want to be faster than everybody else.
Okay, excellent. I see the time's running out, so I'll try and get through this question. Could go on, but just bear in mind, it's your time here, so just if you want to give us a long answer, please go ahead. So obviously Adel is trying to bring a lot of legal framework into the whole cryptocurrency space. As we've seen now in China recently, there's been a lot of tension over the possible regulations and so on that they might be coming out with. And what is Adel's core framework for this? We're going to see, I think, a lot more coming out over time now. The whole cryptocurrency space has, I think, become a little bit into the spotlight, and people are going to trying to be pushing regulation, and whether it's kind of KYC or AML policies and so on. What are the first steps that Adel thinks is like the key to really building this legal framework, and how does that differentiate you from some of the other projects out there in terms of the legal framework, giving customers and giving anyone interested a bit more comfort, that they're dealing with something it's got a bit more regulatory thought behind it? Yeah.
Well, the first step that we did was we established a legal entity in order to have a legal foundation from a company perspective before the ICO. So we established a company in the Isle of Man, and they allowed us to get a designated license for us to run the ICO and then issue the Adelphoi coin as part of the ICO process. So we went through the process with them, explained what we're doing, and we had a lot of very good documentation on our intentions, which is across like 11 white papers that we had at the time. So they had a lot of confidence that we were good business savvy people, and we wanted to do this in a right way, because they were being solicited by a lot of companies around the world that want to do ICOs in the Isle of Man, but not particularly on the up and up, as we would say. So that was the first thing, and the second thing is, part of that designated license, we needed to be KYC compliant. So that we believe that became a positive, because ultimately what we're trying to do is incubate projects. So by knowing our customers, knowing those that participate in the ICO, that will eventually get into the E2 process, the execution of the projects, we need to know who these people are. So we thought, why not do it now rather than do it when we have the second phase legal framework? Let's do it now in the first phase. The first phase was to create a legal framework for the ICO, to issue a coin, that is not a security, doesn't have any dividends, has no rights, as it's purely a digital currency, and it can be traded on the exchanges, but there's no ownership rights or anything to that currency. The second phase is all about this Adel share, an ADS that we want to build, which will ultimately enable us to execute on the E2 process and run these projects, so that there could be a profit share for the members to participate in that project execution. So that legal framework is being established right now, and we just didn't have the time or the resources or the money to do everything before the ICO. It just wasn't feasible. We needed to raise some capital in the ICO to see what type of funds we would have available, and then use those funds as part of E2, the phase 2 process. So that's why we split it into these two phases. We became the first KYC, AML, CTF compliant ICO in the world. Know your customer, anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism financing compliant ICO in the world. And we believe that's a positive move. We think that other companies will follow in the future down the ICO route. And we can see how the regulators some of them are cracking down on the ICOs, cracking down on DAO type models. We're seeing it in China right now, asking the active ICOs to give refunds back. We believe that we have a good foundation for us to ultimately create a legitimate business moving forward, and it takes us steps ahead of anybody else that hasn't created that foundation from the beginning.
Yeah. So I guess you feel a bit more secure now that you've taken these measures beforehand, and you won't have people coming to kind of knock on your door asking these awkward questions at this point in the project. You've dealt with that from the onset, and now you know that you have that legal framework built out for you in the future.
Well, feeling secure is a relative concept, right? I mean,
we
are in crypto. We are in an unregulated space. There is a moving target. There's a moving goalpost here that we need to navigate around. Right, so as new regulations come up, we need to navigate around those new regulations. When we're asked questions, we need to answer them. We feel comfortable with being able to answer those questions to the best of our abilities. And ultimately, what it comes down to is that we have a vested interest to meet compliance, and we've documented that in all our documents. So even if a regulator has concerns in a certain aspect, we give us some time and we'll fix it, right? That's ultimately what I think regulators want from any legitimate business. They'll say, okay, there's this new framework. You have 6 months or 12 months to apply, adjust to this new framework, and then we'll check on you then afterwards. But that's ultimately what we want to do, is to be able to, as the market matures and as the regulators catch up to this whole new phenomenon of blockchain and cryptocurrency, that we also are in step with that process.
Okay. Maybe for anybody who's unsure out there, I wanted to ask specifically about the Adel token and what that eventually represents. So from what I understand, it's a currency. What the Adel token represents is a currency in that Adel blockchain, or it represents a stake in the community projects, or it represents both. Maybe you can kind of clarify what people holding the Adel token, what it represents to them down the line.
Okay, so let's clarify what it isn't right now, just to make it perfectly clear. So
sure.
It's not a stake in any project, okay? It's not a token. We're calling it a coin, right? And because what we're doing in Adel is we're referring to tokens as more of a, verging on a securities type model, right? So the Adel share will represent a token of some sort, and we will have a securities framework around that if we see that as a requirement, right? So so that we're in the middle of investigating that. So the Adel, the ADL coin, the Adelphoi coin, is purely digital currency. There's no rights to it. It can be traded within the ecosystem. It can be traded on external exchanges. We're on CSEX right now, CryptoDAO, Stocks.exchange, and also on the NXT blockchain. It can be traded. And so we don't have an Adel blockchain. We're on the NXT blockchain as an asset, and we chose NXT because of their blockchain as a service model, which allowed us to to utilize their features in the Adel vision that we wanted to execute.
Yeah.
And then this ADL coin will ultimately be used as a currency to purchase the ADS, the Adel share. So,
Okay.
So the members, only members will be able to buy the ADS.
ADS, yeah.
ADS, the Adel share, in order to have some sort of profit sharing in projects. And that'll be the currency used to buy ADS. So that's how we're splitting it in the ecosystem. So either you have participants of the ICO that are speculators and they bought into the Adel coin to trade it on the exchanges and make a profit, for example, or they hold on to it and wait until we incubate projects and then put it into buying the ADS token.
Yeah, but the Adel token itself will be continued to be available as a currency. So if you bought that in the ICO and your plan is to hold it for 3 years, you can do that, and you have that Adel currency that you can basically hold as a currency for long term.
Yeah. So it's not a token. It's a coin. Yeah. So the ADL coin. It can be held on to. Even the participants of the ICO that didn't have the threshold to become a member, which was 1 Bitcoin at the time, they can trade on the exchanges and get enough Adel to join the community. So in the account module, we allow up to 6 NXT addresses, and we sum up the Adel coins for all 6 NXT addresses, and that sum establishes your stake. And if it's above 64,000 after the ICO, then you automatically become a member.
And once you have that membership status, if you get rid of some of your coins, or if you sell some of your coins, you then lose your status as a member. As a member, do you have to keep a certain amount of assets invested in the project, or is it a kind of one-time threshold? Once you meet that, then you continue to stay a member?
That's a good question, actually, and I was waiting for that question. So, because it's on the minds of a lot of people. So, what happens is that up until the point where we don't yet have the Adel share, and we only have the Adel coin. So, what's going to happen is that if you dip below 64,000, actually, let's put it this way: if you're an ICO participant and you dip below 32,000, 32,000 is for all the ICO participants that are members right now. So they have a threshold of 32,000. So if they dip below 32,000, they'll have 7 days to get above 32,000 and maintain their membership. So it'd be like a window of grace period, as we would call it.
Okay.
And if you established after the ICO and you didn't have that 1 Bitcoin minimum for membership during the ICO, and you started to trade or purchase after the ICO, then that limit became 64,000.
64,000,
right?
yeah.
And again, the same thing, that if you dip below 64,000, then you have 7 days grace period to top up. Once we have the Adel share, then we will combine the value of the two, right? So let's say you use all 64,000 into purchasing the Adel share, you're still a member.
Okay.
Because the combined value of your ADL and ADS is about 64. So,
okay,
yeah,
great.
So that, that doesn't make sense to you lose your membership because you put your money into a project, right? So it has to be combined, and we just have to find the mechanism, the mathematics around making sure that what is the combined value of the two, and we'll establish that. It's just logistics in the end.
Okay, cool. So just, I guess we'll kind of wrap things up here. You said you had about 10 minutes left, looking over some of the announcements on the Adel Slack there. So you guys are kind of looking at the moment for some hiring, some social outreach, looking for some people to help you with the development. So anybody who's interested there, I suppose get in touch with yourself on the Slack. You also have bounties for people, trying to get Adel listed on different exchanges. So, we want to see that grow. And, how has that experience been with the exchanges? I think it's a bit of a, close curtain to most people. They don't really understand how that works. How is the process of getting listed on the exchange? And, do you see yourselves, getting onto more exchanges in the future?
Yeah, the exchange is an interesting one. You know, I think if we did the ICO 9 months earlier, or even 6 months earlier, I think we would have been automatically on these exchanges. Especially, you know, with the legal framework that we have, it's a little bit daunting that we're not on these exchanges. You know, we're trying to get onto Bittrex. You know, we even approached 120 exchanges, and so we're on 4. The Chinese ones, of course, are kind of off the table right now because they have their own issues. So, you know, we are moving forward with Bittrex. We submitted the application initially in the middle of our ICO, so that was in May. And they have all the paperwork, they have everything, but they're not commenting on whether they will post us. But we would love to get on there. And in the meantime, we're just incubating projects and working on creating the collaboration modules and the other modules. And hopefully one day they'll list us. And if there are members that sometimes have contacts in these exchanges saying, look, we're open to the bounty. If you are able to get us to exchange, let's negotiate a bounty. I don't want to have a set number. I prefer to have for us to have a reward that is acceptable on both sides, and that is reflective of the opportunity. So, you know, the bounty will be nice for the person that helps us getting on to Bittrex, and we'll probably pay a few people because there's a few people that are helping us to get onto Bittrex right now. And we have bounties for at the moment mainly for articles, for video blogs, for these type of interviews, for example, and any type of promotion in social media. I'm also looking for a social media content marketing manager to help out in terms of weekly announcements, actually even to get to the point of daily announcements. So I'm interviewing this week and next week for that person, and hopefully we get somebody on board. And of course, anybody that hears this interview, if they are interested, then would definitely be willing to talk to them. Looking for other types of marketing people as well to help us out with a lot of areas. And we're looking also for a really high-level JavaScript developer to help our JavaScript developer currently on the modules. And then as we start to incubate projects, we have this project review committee, which will be the experts that will oversee the whole incubation process. And we want to bring in some high-level experts to join that team, which will be part of the Adel services team, that to really map out different disciplines that could play a very strong role in putting together these business plans in the best possible way. So we haven't posted those jobs right now because we're soliciting feedback from people that are coming to us right now that are interested in talking to us, joining the team, participating in some way, and some of them are already good candidates for the project review committee. So we're already getting a lot of candidates even without posting a job for the project review committee. So we'll probably get to the stage where we'll formalize that whole process once we have some resources to do that.
Nice. I think that's the lovely thing about this kind of community at the moment, is that there's a lot of people willing to kind of, you know, offer their hands, get involved themselves, you know, and just be part of it. And I think you can see that as well with Adel. You know, it's a community project, and the more that we see people kind of, you know, putting their efforts into it, you know, the project just grows organically from there. So, I mean, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more from Adel, as you said, with that whole legal framework built behind everything. I think it makes sense that, you know, it's the way to go forward.
That's great.
Gabriel, thank you so much for the time. It was really interesting chatting to you, and you know, anything in the future, if you want to pick up a chat again, you're interested to do something like this again, just reach out to me. I'll be very happy to do that.
Well, thanks a lot, Yves. If you want to do a follow-up interview, that'd be great. But I appreciate your time, and hopefully it was useful.